Hi all, this is the review for the final exam, which we'll be doing in week 14. And so I'm going to talk you through the exam, what the project is, and what you'll do to prepare for it for the exam next week. So let's get started on looking at the what the task is going to be. All right, so the task for the final is going to be to write a reflective essay about a learning experience you had in this course, and the learning experience will be related in some way to the course content. So it might focus on dual process theory, it might focus on moral psychology, it might focus on something that we talked about in class in relation to these to those subjects. So describe what the experience was like, how it built on your previous knowledge and experience, and how it might have changed or altered your perspective in some way on the problem you are discussing. So that's really important in a reflection paper to capture the ways in which it sort of changed your perspective and you sort of grew from the experience of having this of sort of learning this content. So it's good in writing a reflection paper to make connections with other courses you've taken, other things that you're interested in, sort of outside of school as well, if there's anything you know about that's connected. Explain how the experience challenged you, how it confirmed or disconfirmed your assumptions about the issue, how did it change your perspective. So demonstrate an understanding of the course content as well, related to the experience of your that you're discussing. So you'll want to talk about the course content to kind of frame the experience and get it across. So you'll demonstrate an understanding of the content in doing that. Exhibit critical thinking about the material and about your own learning process, and that's very important too. Reflect on your own learning in the course, what came easy and what was more difficult, what was obvious and what was surprising, and why was that the case. So you're reflecting on your own sort of learning process, and sort of what was easy about it, what things were more difficult, what was surprising, what sort of what made you think. So you're going to want to reflect and sort of bring out those sort of parts of your learning process when you do the paper. Write as clearly as you can and explain your points as fully as you can. So what I like about a reflection paper is that it sort of builds, it gives you a way of sort of of reinforcing the knowledge that you've gathered in the course. And I think that's really important. There's a lot of research that says reflection is really important for making knowledge stick. So if you kind of if you engage in some kind of reflection about your learning, how it happened, how you felt about it, what changed, it's really important for sort of integrating what you've learned into everything else you know, and helping you to kind of assimilate what you've learned so that it's useful and so that you sort of know where it stands and how you've sort of grown from the experience. So there's a lot of useful research about how reflection is useful for kind of, in reinforcing the knowledge you learn in a class and making it stick. And that's why I think it's a useful exercise to do a reflection paper in a final exam. All right, so let's have a look at some of the features. It's an assignment that invites you to draw on your own experience, the reflection paper. It's discipline and course specific. It might take the form of a short paper on course reading. So here, that's what we're going to do. You're going to write the essay the final in the form of a short essay, talking about your response or your sort of experience of a particular kind of a particular learning experience in the course. Okay, so You want to bridge comprehension of course readings with your knowledge and experience. And again, that helps you sort of integrate what you've learned and to sort of bring greater depth to your knowledge. You want to integrate your knowledge and experience with course readings and concepts, drawing on concrete examples. Question your assumptions about a course reading or service play, in this case a course reading, stepping back from your prior beliefs to arrive at a more complex understanding. So it's different from a research essay and the sort of research essays that we've done so far in this course. A reflection paper has a much more open structure, and you're sort of exploring your relation to the course content, not just sort of talking about the content itself and how it works. So it's much more about your own experience and what you learned from the content that's important here. So it doesn't require a controlling idea. Thesis statement isn't super important, as long as it's clear that you know what you're doing and you know what you're saying. It's not sort of organized around a central claim. You're sort of exploring your learning, and you can do that from in a number of different ways. A reflection paper does tend to be first person, in contrast to a research paper. That again, the sort of thesis papers that we've done so far, generally not first person, but here you're going to talk about your learning, what it meant to you, what you experienced. So the first person point of view, using I, is going to be an important part of the paper. So not conclusive, but it's sort of identifying questions and gaps in knowledge, making connections, sort of challenging your prior assumptions, but not necessarily coming to a specific conclusion about what the material means, but showing how you've sort of grown and learned from it. That's what you're trying to do in the reflection paper. So here's just some examples of reflections, and sort of how you can sort of introduce reflection. So here in the English literature essay, this person is sort of reflecting on the color brown and how it made them sort of, this remark in the paper made them sort of think differently about this color and its importance. So that's a sort of nice example. So those are the kind of reflections when you're doing, when you're thinking about how a reading or a sort of concept or an idea made you sort of think differently about something, made you change your views about something. So to get started, you want to identify the sort of idea, the concept, the issue or the experience that you want to focus on that was most important. Relate this to your own experience, connect it to the course material. How did it challenge you? And what are its implications in terms of your individual growth, your understanding, your career goals, etc. You can bring in all those things if they're relevant, and talk about what it sort of means to you. So it's much more, as you can see, it's much more focused on your learning, and less focused on kind of getting the material right. So reflective writing is your response to experiences, events, or sort of new information, new learning. Your response to thoughts and feelings, a way of thinking to explore your learning, an opportunity to gain self-knowledge. As I said, reflection is a very good way of sort of making your learning stick. A way to achieve clarity and better understanding of what you are learning, which I think it's a nice way to sort of do it in a final exam. Reinforcing writing skills and sort of creating meaning from what you study. So you're not just conveying information, you're not just describing, problem solving, or you're not just summarizing, although you may need to summarize some ideas to get the sort of the experience across. But you're not just summarizing, you're sort of exploring your thinking, and the way you're responding to the material. So this type of assignment, the reflection paper, is good for making connections. Like I said, connections between what you already know and what you're learning, connections between this class and other classes that you're doing and that you're learning. What are the sort of connections that you can make there? And so connections to your experience, to your life, if anything you can think of that would sort of help to frame the experience. So that's what's important. Examining your learning process, and again, this is why it's really important for sort of reinforcing learning. But you sort of you learn about, you sort of start to reflect on how you learned and how it felt, and sort of what sort of changed in your experience. And it also helps you to clarify what you're learning, so you can sort of put things together in a way that sort of makes sense to you and makes sense of the kind of development that you've sort of gone on the course. And reflecting on mistakes and successes, and that's a great sort of idea for becoming a sort of active learner, when you're sort of aware, maybe the first time we did something, you sort of took it the wrong way, or you didn't quite get what a concept was about, or you assumed it was just this, and in fact there was something else going on. So it's really good to reflect on those places where you it kind of became clear to you, but maybe you had to kind of struggle through that. That's a really important sort of part of it, where you can talk about, how you had to sort of get through confusion, or a sort of just a sort of a misunderstanding, in order to sort of to move to a place where you could sort of get really sort of get to what the material was saying. So a number of suggestions here for helping you sort of think through how to do it. So answer key questions, and this might be a good way to start. What was your first reaction to the material? Was it positive, negative, or neutral? The material you want to focus on. Did you find the writer to be credible? Did the material change your mind in some way? Which issues or questions did it fail to address? Were there sort of things you were expecting to happen or to be addressed or to come up which didn't? Do you have any other questions after having this experience, after doing this reading? What did you learn from the material, and does it remind you of any personal experiences of anything else that you read? So this is a nice way of sort of getting, kickstarting your thought about how you felt, how it changed your mind, and try and develop some ideas about how you can start. So once you've done that, and you've got sort of some basic responses, some basic attitudes, and some, you sort of capturing sort of your experience of learning, see if you can identify any common themes. What's the main takeaway? If you could summarize your thought on this idea, on this experience, or this reading that you're talking about, what would you say? And think about what you've learned and how the material has affected you. Be honest about how you feel, especially if the material incites any strong opinions or reactions. Your reflection paper should not be just a summary of the material, as we said, but you'll want to sort of recap some important pieces to kind of frame what you're saying and to back up any assertions you make. So you've got to be prepared to sort of use the material to support what you say. If you're writing about a work of fiction, which we're not, summarize the plot. If we're writing about nonfiction, share the author's thesis or the main argument. So depending on what you're working on, if you're talking about, dual process theory, you'll want to talk about the different sort of the different ideas, the different processes and how they work, the sort of fast and slow processes and so on. So try not to overdo the summary. You don't want to reproduce a play-by-play of the original work, but you're trying to give the reader some context so they can sort of properly understand your experience. Very important is to make connections. What personal experiences did the material or the discussion remind you of? Other books or films? Can you connect it to current events, real-world examples? And then it's good to zoom out and try to see the bigger picture. What do these connections have in common? Can you point to a larger, more universal theme? Is there, what's the sort of theme that's driving this experience? So the more of these connections to other things, to bigger themes you can tie into your reflection to create a cohesive picture, the better it is. And that's an important part of reflection, that you're sort of making these connections with other things and finding ways in which your sort of knowledge is connected across different areas. So you don't really need a rigid structure. It's not as rigid as a thesis paper where you have a sort of introduction where you state the thesis and so on. The most important thing is to communicate your ideas clearly and effectively. So the following is a loose outline to think about. So you might want to have an introduction and briefly summarize the experience and sort of talk about what its sort of basic impact was on you. And then you'll support this in the body paragraphs. So explore your reactions and feelings after reviewing the material. Build connections to personal experiences and other works you've encountered. So draw those connections to sort of expand your learning. So those are the things you're going to do in the body. And in the conclusion, just tie it all together. Show sort of how your learning happened, and summarize the overall effect that the material had on you. So it's a kind of looser structure. You don't necessarily have to do it this way, as long as it's sort of clear what you're doing, and that you're sort of you're sort of showing the reader the different stages as you sort of work through the experience and you sort of make connections. Okay, so like I said, the final will be available in week 12. You'll have 2 hours to write the reflection paper. Obviously, you can sort of prepare ideas, prepare thoughts, and prepare things beforehand. But the exam will be available for 2 hours once you log in. So good luck. If you have any questions or you want to talk more about the final, feel free to reach out and email me, or we can talk in office hours. And good luck, and I will see you online.